The knock on my door was soft, almost apologetic, like the person on the other side wasn't sure if they deserved to be there. When I opened it, I didn't recognize him at first. Not because he looked different. We're twins, after all, mirrors of each other. But because what stood on my porch looked like a ghost of the brother I grew up with. His face was a canvas of bruises. Not the kind you get from clumsy accidents. No. These were the kind that screamed someone did this to me. A purple bloom across his cheek, a split lip, eyes bloodshot, not from tears, but from pain he couldn't speak out loud. His ribs were cradled like they might fall apart. His knuckles were raw. But the worst part? He couldn't look me in the eye. He walked into my house without a word, and I shut the door behind him, my stomach already turning into knots. For a while, we just stood there. He sat on the edge of the couch like he didn't deserve comfort, his hands locked together so tightly his knuckles turned white. I said his name. He flinched. That broke me more than anything. When he finally spoke, it was in fragments. Raw. Shaky. A voice so different from the cocky, loud twin I used to share bunk beds and detention slips with. He told me his wife's brothers, Marcus and Derek, had been tormenting him for months. First it was jokes. You know the kind. Macho banter that isn't funny. Then it turned physical. Shoving. Threats. And eventually, beatings. In his own garage. In his own home. They told him not to tell anyone. That no one would believe him. That if he caused problems, they'd ruin his life. His wife didn't protect him. She either laughed along or looked away. He was trapped. And then he looked at me, really looked at me, with eyes so hollow I barely recognized him, and asked me to do something crazy. He asked me to trade places with him. He wanted me to become him. Just for a little while. Enough time for him to disappear, get help, maybe even heal. He said, "You're the only one who could pull it off. We've always looked the same. They wouldn't notice." And I said yes. God help me, I didn't even think about it. I just said yes. I didn't realize then what I was about to walk into. But I was already in too deep. The switch wasn't as simple as just handing me his wallet and keys. We spent the next 2 days like we were prepping for a spy mission, except instead of infiltrating some foreign government, I was infiltrating his nightmare. He walked me through his daily routines, his job, his wife's habits, his daughter's quirks. He gave me the layout of the house, showed me which neighbors were nosy and which ones wouldn't bat an eye if they saw blood on the driveway. He even walked me through how she liked her coffee. 2 sugars, no milk, don't ask why, she'll think you're criticizing. It was all disturbingly clinical. Like he'd mentally checked out long before the bruises showed up. He handed over his phone, already scrubbed clean and swapped with a backup, but he'd saved every text from the brothers. Every insult. Every veiled threat. They were smug, too, calling him soft, laughing about. Teaching him a lesson. Saying things like, "You need to man up if you want to keep our sister." By the end of the briefing, I didn't just want to help him disappear. I wanted to burn their lives down. We practiced the little things. His walk slouched, tentative. His tone, soft, apologetic, always second-guessing himself. I mimicked how he rubbed the back of his neck when anxious. How he never made eye contact unless someone forced it. It felt disgusting. Like I was putting on someone else's trauma like a costume. But it had to be perfect. I wasn't just stepping into his life, I was stepping into his fear. He told me about his daughter Emma. 8 years old, sweet, curious, and already learning how to tiptoe through her own home like a minefield. She'd learned to go quiet when Uncle Marcus came over. She drew pictures of houses with no doors and stick figures with XS for eyes. That hit me hardest. We drove to a remote cabin he had access to, old college buddy's place. No one would find him there. Before I left, I made him promise to get checked out by a doctor and start thinking about lawyers, custody, everything. He nodded, but his eyes said, "I'm not ready for any of that yet." I told him I was. I told him to let me carry it until he could stand again. That night, I pulled into his driveway and sat in the car for 15 minutes, gripping the wheel, breathing like I was about to jump out of a plane. Inside the house, his wife was in the kitchen chopping carrots, didn't even turn around. Just said, "You're late." I answered in his voice. Low. Tired. Sorry. Got caught up. She didn't look at me. Didn't ask where I'd been. Didn't care. She just pointed toward the living room and said, "Emma's watching TV." That's when I realized, My brother didn't just feel invisible in his home. He was invisible. I found Emma curled on the couch, tablet in hand. She glanced up at me, gave a shy smile, and went right back to her show. I asked how her day was. She shrugged. Flat voice. Little kid with big sadness. I told her I was glad to see her. She said okay. That night at dinner, I played the role. Ate in silence while Jennifer scrolled her phone. Emma picked at her plate. No one talked. No one laughed. Just the clinking of silverware and the quiet hum of something broken. It was the calm before the storm. I could feel it. And sure enough, just after 8 p.m., the front door slammed open. The monsters had arrived. Marcus and Derek didn't knock. Of course they didn't. They stormed in like they owned the place, beer in one hand, mud on their boots, and that same smug energy I'd seen in their texts. Marcus, built like a refrigerator with rage issues, made a beeline for the fridge, yanked it open like he'd bought it himself. Derek, lean, cocky, with a permanent smirk, threw himself onto the couch and barked. "What's for dinner, Jenny?" She smiled. Said there were leftovers they could warm up. I stood in the doorway like I was holding in a scream. But I remembered the plan. Be him. Be small. Be invisible. I mumbled something about dinner already being on the table, and Marcus looked me up and down like I was a bug he might step on later. "Where you been all day?" he asked, cracking open a beer without waiting for an answer. "Don't tell me you were at that little accountant job playing with spreadsheets like a good little bitch." Derek laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. Jennifer didn't blink. Just kept stirring something at the stove. I wanted to snap. I wanted to flip the table and scream, "You two are dead men walking." But I didn't. I sat down on the armrest like my brother would have. Quiet. Obedient. They drank 3 beers each in under an hour. Took over the living room. Turned up the TV without asking. Marcus told Jennifer to bring him a bowl of chips and called me Princess when I went to get it. Test after test after test. They were marking their territory, and I was their chew toy. That first night, I learned how the game worked. Every time I didn't flinch, they escalated. They wanted fear. They fed on it. So I gave them what they expected. By midnight, they were stumbling drunk, tossing bottles in the sink like it was some frat house, and calling me names that made Emma retreat into her room without saying goodnight. Marcus cornered me in the kitchen before he left. Got real close. Breath sour and thick. Said, "Try to grow a spine before next time. My sister's getting real embarrassed of you." Then he smacked the back of my head, not playfully. Not lightly. Just enough to show me I didn't get to have dignity in this house. I didn't react. Jennifer didn't say a word. Derek laughed all the way to the truck. They peeled off down the street, tires squealing, and I stood there with a half-cracked skull and a jaw full of tension. I cleaned up the mess. Jennifer disappeared into the bedroom without so much as a good night. I finished the dishes alone, staring into the sink like it was going to tell me how to survive the next few weeks. At 2 a.m., I sat in the guest room and hit record on my phone. Voice low, calm, factual. Day 1. Marcus and Derek arrived at 8:17 p.m., left at 12:43 a.m. Insults, minor physical assault. Jennifer witnessed everything. Did nothing. Emma frightened. Avoided contact. Evidence mounting. Then I turned off the phone, stared at the ceiling, and whispered to the dark. "Come at me again, you sons of bitches." I wasn't my brother. And I wasn't broken. But I was ready to make them wish I was. The second night, Marcus brought company. Tony, one of his buddies from the construction site. Bigger than Marcus somehow. Bald. Tank top in December. The kind of guy who laughed at his own farts and probably had a punchable face since birth. The 3 of them walked in already half-lit, carrying a 6-pack like they were delivering a blessing to the peasants. Emma took one look from the top of the stairs, then vanished like smoke. Smart kid. Marcus flopped onto the recliner and clapped his hands. "Yo, let's make it a party. Jenny, get some nachos going." She didn't blink. Just nodded and headed to the kitchen like the world's most abused flight attendant. Derek kicked his boots off onto the couch. "You still playing pretend at that desk job, or you finally manned up and got some real calluses?" he asked me. I gave a small laugh, just enough to sound weak and agreeable. "Still at the desk," I muttered. Tony looked me up and down and said, "You really married her?" "No offense, man, but I figured she'd go for someone who could do at least 10 push-ups without breaking a sweat. Another round of laughter. I took it. Let it hit. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted more. More proof. More rope for them to hang themselves with. That night, they played their favorite game, Break the Man Who Lives Here. Tony started it. A shove. Come on, tough guy. Show us what you got. Marcus followed with a punch to the ribs. Derek laughed, and held my arms behind my back like it was a schoolyard bullying session, not 3 grown men assaulting someone in his own home. It didn't last long. 5 minutes maybe. Enough to leave me gasping, coughing blood into the sink while they stumbled out the door, high-fiving like they just won a bar fight. Jennifer didn't speak a word. She stepped over me to get to the fridge. I recorded everything. Left my phone in my shirt pocket. It caught the taunts, the slaps, the laughing. Every second. Then I hobbled upstairs, locked the door, and sat on the floor of the guest room with the lights off, recording again. Day 2. Assault escalated. 3 perpetrators. Tony unidentified by last name. Sustained bruised ribs, possible cracked tooth. Emma witnessed nothing. Jennifer indifferent. Camera caught it all. I took off my shirt, looked in the mirror, and saw him, my brother. I looked like him. I was him now. And I finally understood the weight he'd been carrying. This wasn't a house. It was a cage. And I was done waiting for the door to open. So I started building the wrecking ball. By week 3, I was running a full-blown sting operation out of a suburban 2-story with a white picket fence and a bloodstain in the garage. I had audio recordings. I had hidden camera footage. I had screenshots of text messages from Derek that would make HR departments everywhere spontaneously combust. I even had Emma's heartbreaking stick figure drawings, her daddy, with XS for eyes, the bad men, with angry scribbles for faces. I logged everything. But now it was time to go offensive. I started digging into Marcus and Derek's professional lives. Marcus worked as a foreman at Apex Builders, a guy who bragged constantly about putting lazy workers in their place, and not being afraid to get physical when someone mouthed off. Music to my ears. Over beers one night, he actually laughed about pushing a guy off scaffolding for being a whiny little bitch. I smiled, nodded, and asked follow-up questions. All recorded. Derek, meanwhile, was a bank loan officer. Real clean-cut image. But once he had 3 beers in him, he'd start leaking secrets. Man, I've pushed through more shady mortgages than the whole crash of '08. I played dumb, acted impressed, and saved every single word. At the same time, I started building alliances. Mrs. Alvarez, the neighbor 2 houses down, had that I see everything but mind my business energy. I casually mentioned how stressful things had been lately, and she gave me a long look and said, "You let me know if you ever need help, Mijo. I've seen those 2 coming around way too often." Boom. Potential witness. At my brother's job, an accounting firm, I started dropping hints. There was a guy there, Sam, who had that golden retriever decency that made you want to confess things. So I told him I was going through some stuff at home, and he offered to grab coffee. We met on our lunch break. He listened. He cared. He even noticed bruises I forgot to hide. "Are you safe?" he asked. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I just looked away and said, "Thanks for asking." I was building a web. Witnesses. Documentation. Patterns. Motive. And then came the bank incident. Derek left his phone on the coffee table while he was in the bathroom. He'd been texting Jennifer, mocking me. "Your man's still moping around like a kicked puppy. Should I bring my boot over tomorrow?" Her reply? LOL. He's so dramatic. But yes, please. I stared at that screen like it was a snake coiled on the rug. Then I took the risk. I screenshotted it, airdropped it to my burner phone, deleted the proof, and returned the phone exactly how I found it. This was no longer about 2 violent brothers. This was about a 3rd accomplice. Jennifer wasn't innocent. She wasn't just looking away. She was participating. I started documenting her too. Her laughter when they mocked me. The way she dismissed bruises with a sigh. The time she told me, "If you stopped acting so sensitive, maybe they'd respect you." She said that while stirring pasta sauce. Like it was just Tuesday. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled and said, "You're right." That night, I went upstairs and edited the folder on my laptop. It now had 3 names on the cover: Marcus, Derek, Jennifer, and next to it, a new label: Final Phase Prep. The trap was nearly ready. I just needed one more thing: for them to go too far. And I knew they would. They went too far on a Saturday. Of course it was a Saturday, when the beer flows early, and the monsters arrive long before sundown. Jennifer left that morning to go shopping with friends. Translation: get out of the blast radius. I was home with Emma, helping her draw a sunflower in a notebook while she talked about her friend's cat and whether clouds had bones. Then the door burst open. Marcus and Derek, already drunk. Faces red, grinning, voices loud. Emma froze mid-crayon. I stood slowly. Calm. Alert. Like a soldier hearing the incoming shell before it hits. Marcus grinned at me. Afternoon, sunshine. Derek followed up with, don't stop your little art class. Maybe you can paint us a mural about how much of a loser you are. I ignored them. I looked at Emma and said gently, Sweetheart, why don't you go upstairs and keep drawing? Marcus stepped in front of me. Nope. She stays. Emma clutched my sleeve. Daddy? And then Marcus said it. She needs to learn what happens when a man forgets his place. He shoved me. Hard. I hit the wall, knocking down a photo frame. Glass shattered. Emma screamed. I scrambled up. Not for me. For her. Then came the punch. To the gut. Deep. Hard. Stars exploded behind my eyes. I dropped to my knees. Emma was screaming now, sobbing, tiny fists hitting Marcus's side. Leave my daddy alone! Leave him alone! You're bad! Marcus turned. Looked at her. And for a split second, I saw it. He considered it. He thought about hitting her. I threw myself in between them, coughing, trembling, ribs screaming. Go to your room, Emma, I whispered. Lock the door. She wouldn't move. Her face wet with tears. No! No, they'll hurt you more! Derek stepped forward, tried to grab her, and I roared. Real me. Not broken brother me. They froze. That flash of confusion again. That moment where they remembered I wasn't supposed to have a voice. Emma backed up, eyes locked on me. Go, I said again. She ran. Slamming her door. Locking it. Marcus bent down next to me, breath sour. You keep raising your voice like that, you won't have any teeth left to smile with. Then they left. Just walked out laughing. Like nothing had happened. I sat there on the floor, shaking, blood in my mouth, fury in my bones. When I could finally stand, I limped upstairs and knocked on Emma's door. She opened it, launched herself into my arms, and cried like the world was ending. She asked me through sobs, Why do you let them hurt you? Why don't you stop them? I held her. I wanted to say because I'm collecting enough evidence to ruin their lives. I wanted to say because your real daddy is healing somewhere safe and I'm taking the beatings for him. But I didn't. I just said, I promise. You won't have to see them again. Not ever. She looked up, eyes wide. Really? I nodded. Really. That night, when the house was finally quiet, I watched the footage from the hidden camera. Every frame. Marcus's punch. Emma screaming. Her trying to pull him away. His eyes, the moment he considered hurting her. I made backup copies. Uploaded everything to secure cloud storage. Transferred the files to my lawyer's server. Then I looked at the calendar. 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks until the dinner. The night we were going to burn it all down in front of their entire family. The night the masks would fall. And the reckoning would begin. The plan was brutal. Beautiful. Surgical. I met with my lawyer, Rebecca Chin, 3 days after the incident with Emma. She watched the footage twice, her lips pressed into a hard line, fingers white around the coffee mug. By the end, she looked at me and said, We're not just filing charges. We're building a war machine. We spent 2 hours in her office laying out the strategy. Marcus and Derek, multiple counts of assault and battery, child endangerment, financial fraud. Jennifer, aiding and abetting domestic abuse, contributing to a hostile home environment, and, if we pushed hard, custody endangerment. Then I said, I want one more thing. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. More? I want them humiliated. Not just arrested. I want their entire damn social circle to see what they've been protecting. So we planned a dinner. Not a casual one. Not a birthday party. A big, family-wide reconciliation dinner. Hosted by me. Finally ready to apologize, I said on the phone to Jennifer. You were right. I've been difficult. I just want peace. She beamed. She said she was proud of me. She thought I'd finally broken. The trap was set. We invited everyone, Marcus and Derek, of course. Their parents. Jennifer's extended family. Even some mutual friends who'd stood by for years, watching the abuse with polite silence. I wanted them all in one room. One perfect, oblivious, boozy little house of cards. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, we launched Phase 2. I filed formal complaints with Marcus's company, Apex Builders, through their ethics hotline. Gave specific dates, names, incidents. Detailed his violence on job sites, straight from his own drunken mouth, recorded and transcribed. I also filed anonymously with OSHA, just for fun. Derek? I reported him to First National Bank's compliance office. Sent in screenshots of texts where he bragged about loan fraud, unethical approvals, and financial manipulation. I even flagged his branch on Google Maps with a review that read, "Ask for Derek, he'll bend every rule if you bring a six-pack." His bank launched a full internal audit 2 days later. I coordinated with Detective Sarah Morrison, a domestic violence specialist. She reviewed every file, photos, audio, video. The Emma footage broke her. She watched it in silence, then muttered, "We'll bury them." She promised to have arrest warrants issued the moment the dinner ended. She also gave me a wire. Real thing. Tiny mic taped to my chest, relaying everything in real time to the cops sitting 2 blocks away, waiting in a parked cruiser. I also made arrangements for Emma. I wasn't about to risk her being in that house when it all went down. So I took her to Mrs. Alvarez's place under the cover of a sleepover. Emma was thrilled. Cookies, Disney movies, 0 sociopaths. Win-win. On the day of the dinner, I woke up early and cooked. Yes. I cooked. The guy who once started a small stovetop fire making grilled cheese. But I followed Jennifer's menu, exactly. She watched me prep hors d'oeuvres like I was finally stepping into my role as the obedient lapdog. I smiled. I nodded. I said, "Yes, dear." Inside, I was counting down the hours. By 6:30 p.m. The house was full. Marcus and Derek showed up laughing, already half drunk. Marcus slapped me on the back hard enough to rattle my teeth. Derek handed me a 6-pack and said, "Look at you, playing host. Finally grew a pair?" I smiled. "Something like that." The rest of the family trickled in. Jennifer's parents. Her Aunt Carol and Uncle Mike. The friends who'd stood in silence while I was humiliated at barbecues and birthdays. The people who clapped when Marcus made cruel jokes, who raised glasses when Derek corrected me in public. They were all here. Eating my food. Drinking my wine. Living in ignorance. Dinner was loud. Laughter, clinking glasses, smug toasts. Marcus told a story about the time he, accidentally, broke a guy's nose on a construction site. Everyone laughed. I poured more wine. I kept checking my phone. The signal was good. The wire was live. And then, after dessert, I stood. "Everyone," I said, raising my voice just enough to cut through the room. "Before we call it a night, I'd like to share something. Just a short little, home video. A few things you might have missed this year." The projector hummed to life. And on the wall behind me, in front of 24 people, a photo of my battered face filled the screen. Gasps. Forks clinking against plates. Then I pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the room. "You're worthless. I should have finished the job last time." A thud. A grunt. The sound of a body hitting the floor. Derek's laugh. Jennifer's text. "Thanks." He needed it. The room went silent. Then it started to implode. The projector clicked. A photo of my bruised face filled the living room wall. Silence fell like a dropped hammer. Then the recording started. Marcus's voice, slurred, cruel, taunting me, calling me worthless. Derek laughing in the background. The sick thud of fists against flesh. The audio was clear. The violence was undeniable. Every person in that room, Jennifer, her family, the friends who used to laugh along, sat frozen, staring at the truth they'd ignored. I stood beside the screen, steady. "My name's Daniel," I said. "I'm not Michael. I'm his twin brother." He came to me covered in bruises. Begged me for help. So I took his place. I've been living in this house, documenting every moment of abuse. Everything you're seeing, everything you've laughed at or excused, I recorded. For him. And for Emma. Gasps. Marcus stood up, red-faced. You little. Sit down, I said coldly. I clicked to the next slide, Emma's drawings. Stick figures with XS for eyes. One labeled Daddy. 2 towering figures, bad men. Then the final video, Marcus hitting me in front of her. Emma screaming. Begging. Trying to pull him off me. Her voice shaking as she cried. Leave my daddy alone! That broke the room. Linda sobbed. Jennifer covered her face. Robert looked like he'd been punched in the gut. I pulled out my phone. I've shared all of this with my lawyer. The police. And your employers. There are arrest warrants for Marcus, Derek, and yes, Jennifer too. A knock on the door. Detective Morrison entered with 2 officers. Marcus Patterson. Derek Patterson. Jennifer Patterson. You're under arrest. Marcus tried to run. Didn't make it past the dining table. Jennifer screamed. You ruined my family! No, I said. You did. They were dragged out in cuffs. Emma came home the next morning. Michael stepped through the door behind her. She ran to him and held him like she never planned to let go. And for the first time in a long time, he held her without fear.